A church was about to spend $30,000 to fix their basement wall. A foundation company had them convinced that that was their only solution. I was hired to handle the landscaping work before and after they did their repair. I could have made thousands of dollars on this job. Instead, I looked at their building and pointed out that their gutters were too low, and showed them how the downspouts really dumped right in the lowest spot around their property. And I told them probably $500, $1,000, you could fix this, and they did that, and their problem disappeared. But I made $0 from that because I passed a gutter friend his information to them, and then their church did the downspouts. So I made $0, 0 referrals, and I'd do it again. Today I'm going to tell you why walking away from sales is sometimes the best decision you'll ever make, and how being a trustworthy salesman makes you more money in the long run than being a slimy, greasy car salesman. This is actually chapter 9 from my book, Business is a Journey, Not a Destination, and it's titled Put the Car in Gear. So it's time to make your first sale, but how you make that sale will determine everything that comes after. It's time to leave the present location by putting your car into gear, head towards, let's say, our business ideal. So to do this, one must make a sale. Someone who is needing your product or service must be willing to have you do it, and most importantly, pay you to do it. Without the first sale, there's no viable business. Without continuing sales, the business will fall apart. Sales will be the fuel for your car. What type of sales approach do you want? We've all experienced that slimy used car salesman that just reeked with lies just to get the sale. But how bad do you want this sale? Would you want to be portrayed as a slimy used car salesman that can't be trusted just so you get that one-time sale? Or would you rather want to be known as the most knowledgeable and trustworthy salesman in your industry? Trustworthy salesmen will make more money in the long run, and you're in this for the long run. Being a trustworthy salesman might include not getting the sale today, but rather referring that customer to someone that better matches their needs. Or maybe only selling them a $50 item instead of a $5,000 item that they thought they needed. It's best to be known as a trustworthy person or company, even though today it might be a missed sale or even just a small sale at first. You're aiming for continual future sales. You want customers to keep coming. You want customers who's going to tell their friends. And only a trustworthy salesman will bring that. A one-time $5,000 sale today might be nice, but if that person has buyer's remorse once they figure out that they could have got their problem solved for $50, then that will reflect negative on you in the future. And it'll cost you hundreds or even thousands of dollars, especially continual sales from that customer. And the free word of mouth referrals that you get from a person like that. So, it's hard to walk away from a potential sale. I've done this several times as I felt out the customer to see how high maintenance they might be. I did this one small project for a lady, and she wanted some continual maintenance done on her property. Her property was a little bit out of the way, and she just seemed to be a little high maintenance. And I didn't think it was a great match, and the reward wasn't going to be that great, especially for the foreseen drama that I might experience. So I passed on the continual maintenance, and she was shocked and didn't know what to say. And I gave her some of my friends who were actually in that area, and said, call them. They could probably better serve you. And so we hung up the phone. And, I felt good that, I got that one off, because it was out of my route, a little bit out of the way. and everything seemed fine. But she called back 30 minutes later and started really verbally attacking me. She showed her hand of crazy early, confirming that I made a wise decision. My younger helper could hear the whole conversation because she was screaming at me, how she thought it was wrong that I abandoned her. And after hanging up, he said, "Man, that sounded like when I broke up with my crazy girlfriend." I'm glad I broke up with that crazy girlfriend early. So there were jobs passed up because I didn't feel that I was the best match for the job, or the customer, might have been a little too high maintenance for me. So when I drive past this church, I'm reminded of really just having integrity in my sales process, and really just having the knowledge of the full aspect of the industry where I could see other problems or solutions for customers. This church had a leak in the basement, and they had a foundation come and quoted $30,000, and they were moving forward with it. But they knew that the large landscape around the foundation needed to be removed, and then they wanted to replace it once they were done fixing the foundation. And this is where I would come in. It'd been several $1,000 job, maybe 5,000, with removals, trimmings, landscaping replacements, retaining walls, stuff like that. But I pointed out that their gutter and downspout situation, their gutters hung really low there on their fascia, and their downspouts actually turned right into low spots around their foundation. And, I told them, I said, those two alone, heavy rain, the water would pass past your gutters, dump along the foundation. And then what did make it into the downspouts, you have it dumping right at your foundation. So I recommended that they call a friend of mine, a gutter guy, and told them, it probably cost you $500, maybe $1,000 to get new gutters and downspouts and drainage around the building. And I told them, I said I could quote them this, or I showed them really what to do. I said, your church members could do it. You just got to dig a trench. And so they got the new gutters, and they had their church members dig the ditches. And, I told them, at least try this first, $500,000, before you spend $30,000, or really more than that, plus the landscaping. Well, changing the gutters and downspouts worked. And, I'd like to say that I got a lot of referrals from them and made a lot of money, future business, but I never did. I lost an hour of my time, no referrals, no money made. But I do have the satisfaction knowing that a small church wasn't taken advantage of, and those monies are hopefully being used to help people and to get the gospel out. Either way, I know that I did the right thing in the sales process. And, there are multiple stories where the initial sale was zero or very low, but the new customer trusted me, and they called me back for future sales, while telling their friends and family in the process. Remember, you're in this for the long game. A single sale today is nice, but when customers call you back continually and trust you with future sales, and they tell their friends and family, this is much better for your pocketbook. Being a trustworthy salesman will continually put plenty of gas in your fuel tank so you can continue your journey. So here's the question you need to answer before you make the next sale. How bad do you want it? Bad enough to lie? Bad enough to oversell? Bad enough to ignore the red flags of a high maintenance customer just to get their money? Or do you want to build something that lasts? Something where customers trust you, call you back, and tell everyone they know. That church basement, I made $0, no referrals, 1 hour of my time gone, but I sleep well knowing that, a small church wasn't taken advantage of. But I have dozens of other stories where I walked away from money in the short term, and it came back tenfold in the long term. The slimy salesman might win today, but the trustworthy salesman wins the next 20 years. You're not in this for one sale, you're in this for a journey. And trustworthiness is the fuel that keeps your tank full the entire trip. So drop a comment. Have you ever walked away from a sale? Did it cost you or pay you back later? Subscribe for Chapter 10, and remember, this journey is your life. Build it on trust, not tricks. So see you in Chapter 10. Thanks.